The sun was lowering over the Arizona horizon when Evelyn Hart realized her world was about to fall apart. The trading post, a lonely wooden structure surrounded by nothing but dust and the thin cry of desert wind, had never felt so threatening. She had spent the last 3 months traveling with her father, Reuben Hart, a man who chased dreams the way most men chased whiskey. And tonight, once again, whiskey was winning. Evelyn stood outside the ramshackle post and watched him stumble through the swinging doors, shouting about debts he swore he didn't know and promises he would never keep. She clutched her small satchel against her chest like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. The post owner, a broad man named Clive, kept his hand on the shotgun leaning against the counter, watching Reuben with growing disgust. "You don't have the money," Clive said flatly, pushing a slip of paper back across the counter. "You can't stay the night." Reuben's face twisted with bitterness. "You know who I am?" "Someone who owes me $40, Clive replied. "And someone who ain't paying it." Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. She had seen this look before: the frustration, the wildness in her father's eyes, the way he scanned the room for anything he could bargain, beg, or steal. She stepped forward, hoping to calm him. "Pa, maybe we can." But he cut her off, grabbing her by the arm, squeezing it hard enough to make her gasp. "You stay quiet," he hissed. Clive snorted and folded his arms. "She can stay," he said, nodding toward Evelyn, "but you're walking out." It happened so quickly she hardly had time to breathe. Her father's grip loosened, then vanished entirely. He looked at her with a strange, distant expression, one she had seen only twice before, both times ending in some heavy loss. "No," Evelyn whispered, shaking her head. Pa, you wouldn't." But he would. He did. "You stay here, Evie," he said, already backing away. "I'll come back when I get the money." "You don't have the money," she cried, stepping toward him. "You don't have anything." Reuben didn't answer. He simply turned, pushed through the swinging doors, and walked out into the desert dusk, leaving behind the only person in the world who had ever trusted him. Clive exhaled heavily, almost pitying her, almost. "Girl, I ain't running a charity. You paying for your keep or not?" "I don't." "I don't have much," she whispered, voice trembling. "Just enough for food on the road." "Road?" He chuckled. "There ain't no road. And even if there was, the desert'll eat you alive before sunrise." She stood frozen at the edge of the porch, staring out toward the purple-red horizon. The sky felt endless, cold, merciless. The trading post lantern flickered behind her, offering light but no safety. She had no horse, no provisions, no family, and no plan. Just a heartbeat that felt too loud in the silence. Night settled quickly over the desert, carrying with it an eerie stillness. Coyotes began their calls, high and sharp like laughter from something hungry. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself, wishing she could vanish into the boards beneath her feet. But someone was watching far in the distance. Dark silhouettes shifted against the dying light. Horsemen. 5 of them. They rode with a steady, unhurried rhythm, gliding across the desert like shadows come to life. Their horses were sure-footed, their bodies wrapped in soft leathers and woven sashes, their long hair moving with the wind. Apache. Clive saw them too. "Best get inside," he muttered, grabbing the lantern and pulling the door shut behind him. "They ain't friendly." Evelyn stayed frozen on the porch, fear prickling across her skin. The riders paused on a ridge, looking down at the trading post. One lifted his hand, signaling something she couldn't understand. Then slowly, deliberately, they turned their horses and disappeared behind the dark rocks. She exhaled shakily. For a moment, she thought they might ride down upon her. For a moment, she wondered if being taken by strangers might be better than being left alone. But nothing came. Just silence. And a long, cold night ahead. Evelyn sank down onto the porch. knees drawn to her chest, and whispered into her hands, "What am I supposed to do now?" The desert gave no answer, but far beyond her sight, the Apache leader who had watched her, Kalin, was already deciding that she would not be left alone for long. Not tonight. Not ever again. The desert night felt endless, and Evelyn barely slept. Every sound made her flinch: the rustling of dry brush, the distant howl of coyotes, the creak of old boards beneath her. The moon had climbed high when she finally drifted into a restless doze, wrapped in her thin shawl. Her cheek pressed against the porch dot, she woke to the sharp crack of hooves. Not one pair. Many. Her eyes flew open just as torchlight flickered between the rocks. Figures emerged from the darkness, silent and sure, as though the night itself had shaped them. Horses snorted. Saddles creaked. And Evelyn felt her heart leap into her throat. Apache riders, dozens this time, moving in a formation that spoke of purpose. Not wandering. Clive, the trading post owner, stumbled out with a rifle clutched to his chest. His hands shook so badly the lantern on the porch cast wild shadows across the riders' faces. "Stay back," he barked, though his voice cracked. "This here's private property." The Apache didn't bother answering him. They fanned out, surrounding the post with practiced ease. Most remained mounted, but 3 men dismounted and stepped forward. One carried himself with a quiet power, a steady gravity that pulled Evelyn's eyes immediately. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with raven dark hair brushing his shoulders and paint streaked across his cheekbones. His expression was unreadable, not cold but assessing. A leader. Even without a word, she sensed the others deferred to him. Kalin, though she did not yet know his name. She felt his presence like a shift in the air. Clive aimed his rifle toward them, but his hands trembled too hard to keep the barrel steady. You get on out of here. I ain't done nothing to you." Kalin's gaze barely flicked toward the weapon. His eyes were somewhere else on Evelyn, curled on the porch, exhausted and shaking. He said something in Apache, his voice low and calm. One of the younger warriors translated. He says, "Put down the gun. You have a woman here who needs help. She ain't none of your business." Clive snapped, but Kalin stepped forward, stopping at the foot of the porch. Evelyn felt suddenly small beneath his gaze, not because he was intimidating her, but because he saw her. Really saw her. Her hunger. Her fear. Her abandonment. He spoke again, softer this time, and the young warrior translated. He asks why she sleeps outside like a stray dog. Heat rushed to Evelyn's cheeks. Shame and anger churned in her stomach. Before Clive could answer, she pushed herself unsteadily to her feet. "My father left me here," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "I had no place to go." Kalin listened closely. His expression tightened, not pity, but something deeper, something protective. Clive scoffed. "Ain't my problem if her fool father walked off. I ain't feedin' her for free." Kalin raised a hand. Silence swept the air instantly. He spoke again, this time directly to Evelyn. The translation came a beat later. "He says a woman should not be abandoned," the translator relayed. "He says you are not safe here." Clive bristled. "She ain't going with you." Kalin gave him a long, cool look, then turned to 2 of his warriors and nodded. Before Clive could lift the rifle, one Apache knocked it clean out of his hands. Another stepped behind him, pressing a hand to the back of his neck in warning. Clive froze, swallowing hard. Evelyn's breath hitched. She wasn't sure whether to scream or run or collapse. 2 warriors approached her gently, palms open, showing they meant no harm. They gestured toward Kalin's horse, a powerful chestnut Mari standing calm despite the tension. The translator spoke again. "He says you have a choice. Stay here and die in the desert, or ride with him and live." She stared at them, chest rising and falling with fear, but when her eyes met Kalin's, she felt a strange stillness inside herself. His eyes held no cruelty, no lust, no triumph, only promise. She swallowed. I'll go. Kalin stepped forward and extended his hand. Large, warm, steady. Evelyn placed her trembling hand in his. The moment their skin touched, the night changed. Something unspoken passed between them, quiet but powerful. With one smooth motion, he lifted her onto his horse, swung up behind her, and wrapped the reins around his fists. The Apache warriors turned north, their torches forming a moving river of fire across the dark. Evelyn looked back only once. The trading post grew small behind her. The life she'd known faded into darkness. And with her back pressed against Kalin's chest, his warmth encircling her, she wondered whether she had been captured or rescued. The Apache camp was alive with the crackle of firelight and the soft hum of voices Evelyn could not understand. She had never seen anything like it. Teepees clustered in a rough circle, the smoke from dozens of small fires curling into the starlit sky. Horses grazed near the perimeter, their flanks gleaming in the moonlight. Children ran barefoot between the fires, laughing and shouting in their tongue. Dogs barked, their eyes bright in the firelight, and everywhere she looked, dark eyes watched her. Evelyn's hands remained pressed against her lap. The leather reins gripped tightly, though Kalin's presence behind her was steady and reassuring. He guided her horse toward the center of the camp with a confidence that told her he knew every inch of this place. She felt every curious gaze on her, every whispering tone, but there was no hostility, only watchfulness. He guided her to a teepee near the center, larger than the others, its entrance decorated with feathers and painted designs. A fire burned low inside, warming the space with a soft orange glow. He gestured for her to enter, and two younger women helped her down from the horse. Evelyn's legs shook. The ground seemed foreign beneath her boots. Her fingers itched to pull her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "This will be your space tonight," Kalin said, his voice calm but low, commanding attention without raising it. "You will be safe here." Evelyn tried to speak, but no words came. She nodded instead, unsure if she had the courage to trust him or anyone yet. He inclined his head slightly and left, stepping out into the night, leaving her in the warmth of the fire. She heard the soft brush of grass behind her and realized he was still standing nearby, keeping watch. The other women in the teepee approached her slowly, offering food, blankets, and quiet smiles. Their gestures were gentle, non-intrusive. Evelyn felt the sting of tears rise. She had never known kindness like this outside of a storybook. The camp was alive with life and warmth, and yet she felt like an outsider stepping into a world that had not been hers to enter. Night deepened, and Evelyn watched through the teepee's opening as the camp carried on around her. Fires flickered like stars fallen to earth. The children laughed and rolled in the dirt. The warriors sat in small groups, sharpening arrows or repairing their leather gear. Their eyes, dark and attentive, occasionally flicked toward her, curious and unjudging. She had never felt so observed, yet so strangely protected. Kalin returned later, the firelight catching in the streaks of paint across his cheek. He knelt by the fire, arranging a small pile of fresh herbs for her to eat and checking her blanket. His movements were methodical, careful, yet there was an intimacy in them that made her pulse quicken. She felt heat creep into her cheeks, an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. "You are safe," he said softly, kneeling so that he was level with her. "No one will harm you here." Evelyn wanted to ask how he knew, how he could promise such a thing, but her voice felt trapped in her throat. Instead, she nodded, letting herself absorb the quiet reassurance of his presence. There was a gravity in him, something unspoken that wrapped around her like a shield. It was frightening and thrilling in equal measure. The wind shifted outside, rustling the branches of the sparse desert trees, and the distant howl of a coyote echoed across the camp. Evelyn shivered, and Kalin shifted closer, just behind her, his broad frame a solid wall of safety. She could feel his heartbeat against her back, steady and strong. And in that simple closeness, she realized she was no longer alone. Not entirely. Sleep came slowly, uneasy yet comforted by the steady presence behind her. For the first time since her father left, Evelyn allowed herself a moment of peace. The firelight flickered across her face, warming her in a way the desert night never could. Outside, the camp hummed with life. And inside, with Kalin watching silently, she felt a strange, fragile thread of trust begin to form, a promise of protection in a world that had offered her none. And somewhere deep in the night, she sensed that her life had just changed forever. The desert morning arrived like a slow burn of gold across the horizon. Evelyn woke to the soft hum of camp life, the children's laughter, the low murmur of voices, and the distant clatter of hooves. For a moment, she forgot where she was, the safety of last night's fire and Kalin's presence still lingering like a protective shadow. Then reality pressed back, cold and sharp. Her father had left her, alone. Again, Kalin was already outside tending to his horse. When he noticed her stirring, he gestured toward him without a word. Evelyn wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped out of the teepee, feeling the morning chill bite at her skin. The air was filled with the scent of sun-warmed leather and smoke from the morning fires. As they walked toward the edge of the camp, a young warrior approached and spoke softly in Apache. Kalin nodded, and the warrior turned to Evelyn. "He says your father. He did not care for you. He left you to die," the warrior translated, his tone matter-of-fact, almost gentle. Evelyn's stomach twisted, a cold pit opening beneath her heart. She had known her father was selfish, had seen his greed, his tendency to chase drink and gambling over responsibility. But to hear it so plainly, in the words of strangers who had risked nothing but their time to explain, felt like a blow she hadn't prepared for. "My father, he couldn't have," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He wouldn't. He promised he would take care of me." The young warrior's eyes were steady, but Kalin's gaze cut through the air like a spear. He crouched slightly to meet her eye level, his dark hair falling across his cheek. "He traded your life for whiskey," Kalin said quietly, each word measured and precise. "He left you because he had no honor. He has no right to call you his daughter." Anger flared through Evelyn like wildfire. She opened her mouth to defend him, but no words came. How could she defend someone who had left her to face the desert alone? Her hands shook, curling into fists at her sides. I can't believe he would," her voice cracked, and she covered her face. Hot tears spilling down. Kalin placed a firm hand on her shoulder. It was heavy, grounding, protective, yet gentle enough to not scare her. "You are not his burden," he said softly. "You are not a possession to be traded or abandoned. No one will treat you that way again, not while I live." Evelyn lifted her tear-streaked face to him, her chest heaving with a mixture of grief and relief. She wanted to argue, to protest, but something in his words resonated deeper than any fear, deeper than any loss she had ever felt. He was not offering empty comfort. He was offering a truth she had never been told. She deserved care. She deserved protection. She deserved love. The young warriors and women nearby observed silently, understanding that this was not a moment for interruption. Kalin guided her back toward the teepee, his hand lingering just slightly at the small of her back. Evelyn could feel his warmth, steady and reassuring. She realized for the first time that her father's abandonment was not the end of her story. It was a turning point. She wanted to ask him why he cared so deeply, why a man she had only known for a single night would step into the ruin her father had left behind. But the question stuck in her throat. Instead, she allowed herself to be guided, her trust tentative but growing by midday. Evelyn had begun learning the rhythm of the camp, the sound of children's laughter, the patterns of the warriors' routines, the way Kalin moved through his people with quiet authority. Every glance he gave her was careful, attentive, protective. And with every passing moment, she felt a stirring in her chest, a fragile but undeniable thread of something she had never known before. Hope. That hope was dangerous, and she sensed it. It was uncharted territory. But as she watched Kalin move among his people, commanding respect with a quiet confidence, she felt a flicker of something even more powerful than fear or grief. She felt the possibility of belonging, and in that sun-drenched desert afternoon, Evelyn Hart realized she might finally have a chance at a life she never thought possible, one not dictated by a father's failures, but shaped by the strength and honor of a man who had chosen to protect her. The days in the Apache camp passed with a rhythm Evelyn had never known. The mornings were filled with the crisp air of the desert, horses stamping, and the smell of fresh fire smoke curling around her teepee. The afternoons brought lessons in riding, tracking, and the ways of the land skills she had never imagined she would need. And the evenings, quiet and shadowed by the setting sun, carried a tension she could neither name nor escape. Kalin watched her constantly, not with the cold stare of a captor, but with a steady intensity that made her pulse race. He taught her how to mount a horse properly, how to coax it into a run across the open plains, how to bend with its rhythm. She stumbled often, skin bruised and hands raw from the reins, yet every time she faltered, he was there. A guiding hand on her elbow, a steadying presence behind her. He never scolded, never rushed. And with each passing day, Evelyn began to feel the trust between them grow. Fragile but undeniable. One afternoon, they rode together across a high ridge overlooking the desert. The sun hung low, painting the sky with streaks of fire and violet. Kalin rode slightly ahead, then turned, watching her struggle with the reins. When she wobbled, he leaned close and murmured, "Relax your shoulders. Let the horse feel you, not fight you." The brush of his hand on hers, brief, almost accidental, sent a shiver through her. Evelyn's cheeks burned, and she focused on the ground, pretending to check her stirrup. But she couldn't ignore the warmth that lingered where their fingers had brushed, nor the pull she felt toward him. At the camp, evenings became their private moments. While the rest of the warriors gathered around fires, trading stories or repairing gear, Kalin would show her the stars, naming the constellations and teaching her to read the desert winds. She learned to listen to the whispers of the land, the faint rustle that warned of approaching animals, the shifting clouds that promised rain. And all the while, Kalin's presence remained a constant, grounding her in ways she had never known. One night, as the camp settled and the children were led to sleep, Evelyn found herself sitting alone near the fire. Kalin approached, quiet as the desert itself, kneeling beside her. He didn't speak at first, merely letting the firelight play across his strong features. Evelyn felt her heart thumping, a wild and erratic rhythm that matched the desert wind. "You are learning quickly," he said finally, his voice low, almost intimate. "You are strong, Evelyn. Stronger than you realize." Her breath caught. No one had ever called her strong, not her father, not anyone. And in the weight of his gaze, she felt a stirring she did not want to name. I'm trying," she whispered. Kalin's eyes softened, but the intensity did not fade. "Trying is enough," he said. "But know this, the desert does not forgive weakness, and I will not forgive anyone who hurts you again." The words wrapped around her, fierce and tender all at once. For the first time since her father's betrayal, Evelyn felt both safe and seen. She realized that the fear and heartbreak she had carried were slowly giving way to something she had never expected, an attraction she could not deny, a connection that went deeper than trust, And yet, she feared it. She feared the fire she felt when his hand brushed against hers, the thrill when their eyes met, the heat that rose in her chest when he spoke her name. She had been abandoned, left to fend for herself, and she did not know if she could allow herself to desire something so dangerously gentle. But the desert had its own rules, and Evelyn understood, even in her fear, that some flames could not be ignored. Sitting there by the fire, feeling the warmth of the embers and the stronger warmth of Kalin nearby, she allowed herself the tiniest acknowledgement of what was growing between them, a spark that could turn into a wildfire, if they were not careful. And for the first time in her 19 years, Evelyn Hart understood that life could change in an instant, not just through loss, but through the unexpected arrival of someone who could protect her heart, while igniting it at the same time. The desert night was unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that pressed against the ears and made every small sound feel amplified. The campfires had burned low, casting long, flickering shadows across the sand. Evelyn sat outside her teepee, knees drawn to her chest, watching the stars stretch endlessly above her. The world seemed infinite, lonely, and beautiful all at once. She was not alone. Kalin appeared silently, stepping from the shadows with the ease of someone born to move through the night. His dark hair brushed his shoulders, and the firelight glimmered against the paint on his face. He carried nothing, offered no words, simply knelt beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. The desert wind stirred, rustling through the low shrubs. Evelyn could hear the faint sounds of the camp, settling children's soft snores, warriors moving quietly to their tents. But everything else, the vast sky, the sand beneath her fingers, the heat of Kalin's presence felt suspended in a moment outside of time. He spoke first, voice low, deliberate, almost hesitant. "Evelyn," he said, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, "you do not belong in fear. You have never belonged in fear." Her pulse quickened. She swallowed, trying to find words but finding none. He leaned closer, and the faintest scent of leather and desert wind filled her senses. "You have been left by those who should have protected you. But I will not leave you." Evelyn's breath hitched. Her chest tightened in a way she could not fully understand, her heart caught between hope and caution. "Kalin," she whispered, but the name felt strange and intimate on her tongue. He reached for her hand, holding it firmly but gently. Their fingers intertwined, and in that simple touch, a wave of warmth and emotion passed between them, something neither could deny. He searched her eyes, dark and intense, and she felt as though he were looking straight into her soul, seeing every fear, every sorrow, every hidden longing she had tried to hide from the world. Then he spoke the words she would never forget, words that carved themselves into her heart. "Your father left you behind, but in my bed you will find love every night." The confession was not crude nor commanding. It was a vow, a promise that spoke of protection, desire, and a fierce determination to keep her safe and cherished. Evelyn's cheeks burned, her pulse hammering, as she realized the weight of what he was offering, not just passion, but the unwavering choice to stand by her in every danger, to hold her when the world had abandoned her. For a long moment, she could only stare at him, words failing, heart racing, mind swirling with emotions she had never known she could feel. The desert, the stars, the firelight, all of it seemed to bend around them, the world narrowing to just this man, this promise, this fragile moment suspended in the night. Kalin's gaze softened, but the intensity never left him. "I do not ask for your trust lightly," he said, his voice steady, unwavering. "I offer you protection, and more than that, my heart, if you will take it." Evelyn's breath trembled. She wanted to recoil, to run, to hide from the rawness of his confession. But something in her, a quiet, stubborn part she had carried through all the fear and betrayal, refused to retreat. She let her hand squeeze his, a silent acknowledgment that she had heard him, that she understood the depth of his vow, and that perhaps, for the first time, she could allow herself to hope that the night stretched on, quiet except for the whispering wind. The desert held its breath around them as they sat together by the fire, hands entwined, hearts slowly finding a rhythm in the shared silence. Evelyn felt something stir deep inside her, a fragile flame that matched the firelight. Warm and steady, ready to grow if given the chance. And in that moment, under the endless stars, Evelyn Hart realized that her life had shifted once more. The man beside her, a fierce Apache warrior, had claimed not only her safety, but the first glimmer of something she had never dared to name: love. The desert night, once threatening and cold, now seemed alive with possibility. The desert dawn was sharp and unforgiving, the sun rising like a blaze over the rugged horizon. Evelyn woke to the scent of smoke from the morning fires and the low hum of the Apache camp stirring to life. But her heart was heavy, unease crawling beneath her skin. There had been rumors the night before, whispers carried by the wind from travelers along the distant trails. Her father had returned. Evelyn's stomach churned. She had imagined he would never come back, that perhaps desert and shame had kept him away. But the fear and the whispers told another story. He would come, armed and determined, to claim her not for love, but for profit, for greed, for the cruel satisfaction of control. She found Kalin outside, checking his weapons and tending to the warriors who would ride the perimeter that day. When he saw her, his expression tightened, a mix of anger and calculation flashing across his features. "They are coming," she whispered, voice trembling. He didn't flinch. He stepped closer, towering over her, and laid a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Then we prepare. They will not take you," he said simply, the promise in his voice unwavering. By midday, the horizon shifted with movement. Dust rose in small clouds, and Evelyn's father appeared, riding with two other men, rifles slung over their shoulders, faces set with greed and impatience. Clive's warnings, the desert's lawless expanse, none of it had stopped him. And now he came to reclaim the daughter he had abandoned. Evelyn's heart pounded as Kalin moved to position the warriors, his command calm and absolute. The camp seemed to shift as one organism, every movement purposeful. She watched as he met her gaze, his dark eyes steady and full of unspoken reassurance. He would not fail her. Her father stopped at the edge of the camp, shouting, demanding she be returned to him. "Evelyn, you will come with me. You are mine." His voice carried over the dust and heat, but it lacked the power he believed it had. Evelyn stepped forward. Her boots pressed into the desert sand, kicking up tiny clouds. She lifted her chin, her voice strong and trembling, and for the first time in her life, she felt the full weight of her own courage. "I am not yours," she declared, each word cutting like a whip through the tension. "I belong to no man who would trade my life for whiskey or coin." Her father's face twisted in disbelief. Rage flashed in his eyes, and for a moment, Evelyn feared he might charge, might force her back. But Kalin moved beside her, his presence solid and unyielding, his hand brushing hers in a quiet, reassuring touch. "She is under my protection," he said, voice steady and commanding, "and I will fight anyone who tries to harm her." A tense silence fell. Dust swirled around them. The camp held its breath. Evelyn's father saw the warriors, the discipline, the resolve in Kalin's stance. He saw the danger of underestimating a man who had nothing but honor and fury in his cause. Finally, after a long, silent moment, her father spat into the sand, fury mingled with fear. "You'll regret this, girl," he snarled. But he did not advance. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had already shifted against him. Evelyn's knees shook, adrenaline and relief mingling in her veins. She looked at Kalin, the man who had saved her, taught her, protected her, and most dangerously awakened feelings she could barely name. His gaze softened, and he nodded once, a silent acknowledgment that the danger had passed, at least for now. He offered his hand, broad and steady, and she took it without hesitation. The heat of his palm, the reassurance of his grip, reminded her that she had chosen correctly. She had chosen life, safety, and something more, a connection that went beyond fear or duty. Something fierce, dangerous, and undeniable. As the dust settled and her father retreated, defeated but not fully vanquished, Evelyn realized she was not alone anymore. The Apache camp, the desert, and the man who had become her protector were now her world. And for the first time, she understood that love was not just a promise whispered under the stars. It could be claimed, defended, and nurtured even in a world as harsh and unforgiving as the desert. Evelyn Hart, abandoned and betrayed once, now stood fiercely beside Kalin, ready to face whatever dangers the West could throw at her. Her heart beating not with fear, but with desire, trust. And the first glimmers of hope. The first light of dawn spilled across the desert like molten gold, painting the ridges and mesas with fire and shadow. Evelyn awoke to the quiet hum of the Apache camp, the scent of warm leather and smoldering fire drifting through the teepee. The events of the previous day played over in her mind, the confrontation with her father, the dust and tension, the undeniable presence of Kalin standing at her side. Unwavering, she rose slowly, brushing sand from her skirt and tucking her hair behind her ears. Outside, Kalin was already mounted on his chestnut mare, surveying the camp with the same sharp, watchful intensity that had drawn her trust and admiration from the moment he saved her. His eyes met hers as she stepped into the morning light, and she felt a surge of warmth, a silent reassurance that he had kept his promise. Her father had fled during the night, his rage and defeat swallowed by the unforgiving desert. He had underestimated the strength of a man who fought with honor and the courage of a woman who refused to be a victim. Evelyn had seen fear in her father's eyes for the first time, and it was not enough to undo the betrayal, but it was enough to mark the end of his claim over her life. Kalin dismounted as she approached, his movements fluid and commanding, yet careful not to overwhelm her. He extended a hand, palm open and steady. Evelyn took it without hesitation, feeling the familiar warmth of his grip. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if the desert itself had designed their connection long before either of them had arrived. "You are safe now," he said softly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "No one will ever take you from me or from yourself again." Evelyn's chest tightened with emotion. For years she had known fear, betrayal, and abandonment. But now, standing in the warmth of dawn, surrounded by the life of the camp and the quiet strength of Kalin, she felt something entirely new. A sense of belonging, of purpose, and of love that demanded nothing but her willingness to accept it. She began, her voice catching. "I never thought I could feel safe or wanted like this. Not after everything." He shook his head gently, pressing his forehead lightly against hers. "You have always deserved more than what the world gave you. But now you have me and my people and this land. You are ours and we are yours." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but they were not sorrowful. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and finally, hope. She realized that her life, once defined by her father's selfishness and the merciless desert, was now hers to shape. And she had chosen Kalin not just as her protector, but as her partner, her companion, the man whose touch, presence, and unwavering love had transformed fear into courage. The Apache camp stirred around them, a living, breathing testament to resilience, honor, and the enduring bonds of community. Children ran barefoot across the sand, laughing. Warriors moved through the camp with purpose, nodding respectfully to Kalin and acknowledging the quiet power of the woman who had chosen her place among them. Evelyn felt their acceptance wrap around her like a warm cloak, comforting and real. Kalin took her hand again, leading her toward the lodge where the morning fires glowed. Their hearts beat in tandem as they walked together, a silent understanding passing between them. Words were unnecessary. Each step confirmed what had been whispered under the desert stars, fought for in the dust, and cemented through trials of danger and trust. When they reached the lodge, Kalin pulled her close, and this time Evelyn did not flinch. She let herself rest against him, feeling the steady warmth of his chest, the security of his arms. The desert stretched endlessly around them, harsh and unforgiving, yet beautiful, much like the life she had chosen to embrace. Evelyn Hart, once abandoned and betrayed, now stood fiercely beside the Apache warrior who had claimed her heart. Together, they would navigate the challenges of the West, finding safety, love, and belonging in each other. The past no longer held power over her. It was the desert and Kalin that would define her future. And in that golden dawn, as the sun rose over the rugged ridges, Evelyn knew with unwavering certainty that she had found not only protection but passion, loyalty, and a love that would burn brighter than the endless desert sun every single night.